guys, and welcome to the Phoenix Rising podcast, a podcast dedicated to inspire and empower you to create the life that you want. So welcome to the podcast. I am Ashley Drummond, your host. I am always happy that you are here joining me in these conversations that are really just set, to give you like a good kick in the butt and also just a little real life talk, because I feel like that's what we all need. And there's probably nothing more fulfilling to me than sitting down with somebody and just having a real deep conversation about stuff that matters in life. So that's my intention with this podcast. That's what I hope you get out of this, is not only a ton of value and tools that motivate you, inspire, and empower you, but also a sense of connection of just real talk, So welcome to the Phoenix Rising podcast. I am Ashley Drummond, somebody who is obsessed with mindset, with talks about the universe, talks about nutrition and workouts and everything in between. Thank you so much to all of you guys who screenshotted last week's podcast about trusting the process and the timing of your life and shared it on Instagram. I really appreciate that. You guys are so funny because it's it's not you guys. It's, the universe is so funny because sometimes I go through these periods where I'm like, man, do I want to keep doing this every single week? What do I want to do? I'm figuring this out. And then every single time, if I start to take a break or I'm like, maybe this isn't it, I get just bombarded with messages and posts on Instagram of you're I'm listening to this podcast about self-love and it helped me so much. Or I listened to the Trust the Timing podcast and this helped me so much. And then I get an email I'm loving the podcast. Thanks for doing this. So I appreciate you guys, whether you realize it or not. And I always think of this too, we are all always little tools and messengers from the universe. And I think about this all the time. So when you question or you have this nudge or this prompt, oh, I should screenshot Ashley's podcast episode and share it on Instagram. In your mind, it may seem so small to you to do that, of it's not that big of a deal. But what you don't realize is on the other side of that is me, who's universe, I don't know if I should keep doing this. And the universe is you know what? I'm going to prompt this listener over here that's going to screenshot this podcast episode and share it. And that is going to be a message for Ashley so she knows what to do. It's just always fascinating and crazy to me to think about things from that perspective. We're always looking for signs and synchronicities and validations from the universe, but we forget that we also are being used for that as well. That when we say things or when we message somebody or we just had a feeling that we should go to this place at this time, and then by us following that feeling, we, meet a new friend or we make somebody else's day. We are all interconnected and always impacting each other's lives. And that's such a cool thing to me to think about because we get so caught in our heads and we doubt ourselves all the time, thinking that this comment that I make isn't really that big of a deal. I'll just keep it to myself, not realizing that person that you were going to make the comment to could be sitting there in their head universe, send me a sign or a message, and the universe is using you to do that. So never take for granted the small little things that you can do every single day. And sometimes those small things we do, we don't realize the impact it makes on other people's lives until later down the road. Or maybe we never find out, but your responsibility is simply just to follow that feeling and trust that what you're doing is valuable and a big deal. All that to say, thank you for those of you who sent messages and just told me how much you love that podcast, just because it really did make my day. And I screenshot it and I saved them. And it's always just really helpful in doing all of this, knowing how much it helps you guys. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so on that note, one of the things that has been coming up this week that I really, 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 really want to talk about because it's a game changer is the topic of self-worth. And this has come up for some people in the dating world. This has come up for people in like their choices of career and jobs and their level of income. It's something that just is evident in every area of our life. So like you guys sent these messages over the weekend that you listened to the podcast episode, and I was like, man, what do I want to talk about this week? And I always like sit in my meditation and I'm like, universe, show me like, what should I say? What needs to be talked about? And within like 24 hours, I think I had 3 people that were talking to me about issue. Well, they weren't saying like, hey, I have self-worth issues, but me being like a mindset junkie and like all about like the subconscious and subconscious programming, there's been 3 different people who I have worked with this week that were having issues in situations that I was like, this is a self-worth thing. Like, this is so obvious to me. Like, let's talk about your self-worth. Why do you not feel like you deserve better? Why are you struggling with this? Like, where's the core of this? So I wanted to talk about that today and like some of the issues that self-worth, or some of the ways that self-worth really, or I guess I should say lack thereof, really shows up is in being addicted to people pleasing, in settling in your relationships, settling in your job, and being immobilized by fear, pretty much. Like, and what I mean by immobilized is it's when you have all these things that you want to do, but fear trumps all of it and keeps you in the same place. So that's what we're going to get into today. Real quick, before I forget, if you are brand new and you would like to receive the emails that I send out every single week with these podcast episodes and sometimes surprise emails, head on over to ashleydrummond.com and you'll see right there in the middle of the page, obviously all of the podcast episodes, but also you'll see a little box that says, hey, would you like to get my weekly email? And you can just stick it in there and you will automatically receive it every single week. The link to that is in the show notes. Again, it's ashleydrummond.com. Okay, so let's get into self-worth. Gosh, you know what is so interesting about self-worth is you can think you have great self-worth until you go through an experience and you recognize and you actually feel in your core to be worthy and valuable. And then you're like, oh, this is what self-worth feels like. And like a good analogy that I gave this week to somebody was they were talking about dating and what they want, and they were feeling frustrated because they're like, I want this in a partner and I don't understand why I can't have that. And instead I keep attracting all of this. Like, why don't guys like this like me, et cetera, et cetera. And I was explaining to this person, I said, there is a huge difference between wanting something and knowing you deserve something. When you want something from a place of not feeling like you deserve it, you will do everything you can to chase it. So think about that. Like, when you really, really, really want something, but it's coming from a place of like deep down in your core, you actually don't feel worthy of it. You will strive, you will chase, you will burn yourself out pursuing it. You will beat yourself up trying to figure out what's wrong with you every time you don't get it. But when you know that you deserve something or you're worthy of something, your energy totally shifts. You're not out there chasing and striving. You're functioning more from a place of just being and knowing. And then the action that you take is simply a reflection of that, where hypothetically, like if you, in this dating situation, if all of a sudden you stop seeing yourself as like, I want this in the person and I want that and I want that and I want that, but everything that I do, it seems to elude me and these guys don't like me. A shift in energy from somebody who has worth and confidence and feels like they deserve that, as opposed to somebody who may want that but is functioning from a place of low self-worth, is so, what's the word? Is it palatable? Palpable? Whatever. You guys know what word I'm trying to say. It's so clear. Like, if you put those two people side by side and neither one of them said a word and you just looked at what they embodied, you could tell which person here do you feel like knows they deserve the best partner or the best job or the best whatever? And which one do you feel like wants it, but doesn't actually think they deserve it? And that's a huge thing. Like, it's self-worth. So where does people pleasing come in from all this? So people pleasing happens from a couple different things going on. Is number one, people pleasing stems from you not wanting people not to like you. You are so scared and so deeply wanting love and acceptance. And I just want everybody to think I'm nice. I just want everybody to like be happy and feel loved. And in the meantime, you're tolerating people who use you, take advantage of you, and abuse you, all for the name of like, I'm just trying to be nice. You are never going to get what you want if your focus is always just trying to be nice. Now, that does not mean that you have to be an asshole, but it does mean that you assert yourself, you stand up for yourself, and you set the value and standards for what you accept in your life. So whether it's dating, whether it's job, whether it's friends, it doesn't really matter. What you accept from other people is what you are going to get. So if you want something different, you have to first establish that you deserve something different, and then you set that standard, because I have seen so many people get used and abused and taken for granted and underpaid and overworked and settling in relationships and all these other things, all because they're so scared of hurting somebody else's feelings. In the meantime, I'm like, well, you're scared of hurting somebody else's feelings, but every night you're feeling empty and lonely and hurt and emotionally distraught. Like, how about instead of putting all this energy and effort into other people's feelings, why don't you start listening and paying attention to yours? That's the problem. And then what ends up happening in this whole like people-pleasing situation is people end up feeling neglected, they feel burned out, they feel like unloved, and they feel totally alone. And it's because they are totally alone in the sense of you are allowing people in your life who don't give two shits about you, but you are putting all this energy and effort into like showing them love and care. So people pleasing comes from wanting to make sure everybody else is okay. I don't want to cause conflict. I don't want to cause pain or hurt. I just want everybody to think I'm nice. I want everybody to be proud of me and think I'm loved. And I would say probably the biggest area of people pleasing I see this in is with people in their family. I don't want to upset my mom or dad. I want them to be proud of me. I want them to like look at me and be proud of like the kid that they had and raised. And I don't want them to be mad by the choices that I've made. And every single time someone expresses this to me, I'm like, well, let me ask you something. One day, your mother or father is going to die. And when that happens, you're going to wake up and you're going to realize that the life you have been living is not the life that you actually wanted. It is a life you created for the approval of other people who are no longer around. You are responsible every single day when you lay your head down on that pillow to check in with your heart, mind, and soul. How do you feel? Are you living the life that you feel like you came here to live? Are you doing work that you feel like you came here to do? Are you in relationships with people who love you, value you, and light you up? If not, you are the only person that can change that. If you continue to make choices based on making other people happy, everybody else in your life might be happy, but you are going to feel so down and confused as to why it feels like something is missing all the time, because you have been putting so much energy on pleasing everybody else in your life. What does your mom or dad want for you in your work? What do they hope that you do? What would make them proud? Are you doing that work right now? And is it making you happy? If not, you have to accept the fact that it's your responsibility. What kind of partner does your mom or dad want you to have? Is that the partner that you have now? If so, is that partner lighting you up, filling your soul with everything that you ever wanted? If not, you are the one in the relationship with that partner, not your mom and dad. What about your friends? Like, look at every area of your life and make sure Am I in all of these situations because this is what really makes me happy? Or am I doing it to please, I don't know, a spouse, a parent, or somebody else? Like, we get so caught up and so scared of stepping outside of a box because of the fear of, what will my mom think? What will my dad think? What will all these other people think? And I've even I've heard so many people who get married and then they go to like their parents and they're like, what do you think about like my husband or my wife? And I mean this in the most respectful way possible. But who really cares about what anybody else thinks about your choice in partners other than if it makes you happy? So like, I've had people ask like, so what do you think about so-and-so? Like, they're dating somebody. And I'm like, let me ask you, what do you think? And they'll start talking and talking and talking. And I'm not giving my opinion because my opinion of them and that relationship is not what's important. What's important is their opinion of the relationship and how happy are you in the relationship. So none of it, like, I think in the world of people pleasing and like when I've talked to people and worked with people who struggle with people pleasing, it is such a deep fear of, I don't want to hurt anybody. But the reality is you are hurting yourself by people pleasing. You wonder why you're like constantly like feeling like you're in a struggle or feeling drained or feeling empty or feeling all these things because you're not living your life. You are living the life that everybody else wants for you. And all of it stems from your own self-worth. So people pleasing and like wanting other people to like think goodly, that's not even a word, not think badly of you. What you need to realize is you deserve to have everything that you want. You deserve to be happy and healthy. You deserve a partner who loves you as much as you can love them. You deserve a job that fills your heart with happiness and you are very well compensated for it. You deserve friends who show up for you and put in the time and the energy into your life like you do for them. You have to understand that you deserve that. And then we're going to get into this part of it. So like you can consciously know this, and this is the tricky part. You can consciously know you deserve it. And you're like, yeah, like in my head, I know that. But emotionally, I'm having a hard time making that connection. Like, why do I know? And it's the whole situation. Like people go back to abusive situations or they go back to a job where they're underpaid and overworked or they're unhappy. And it's always like, why do people go back to that? Why do they leave a situation and then they go back to the exact situation where they were being abused or misused or whatever? And I'm going to be honest, like I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know the like science behind it, but I can tell you what I think happens based on my own experiences is I think we have these moments. So we always have these like aha moments, these breakthrough moments in life. And those are the moments that empower us. They empower us to make change, to finally muster up the courage to make big decisions. We have that moment and then we act on that moment and we make this big decision. And in that moment, we're like, I deserve better. I don't know if you heard that. I'm like clapping my hands while I'm talking about this. But in those moments, we have the experience of I deserve better and I will no longer put up with this and tolerate it. And then you're like, I'm breaking up. I'm no longer settling in this relationship, or I quit my job. I'm no longer doing this work that I hate and that like is unfulfilling. And then you're in the in-between. And then you're in this space. And this is what happens. You're in the space. You have this big liberating breakthrough moment, except for you're in the space of the in-between and the two lives. And I know you've heard me talk about this before, the life that you just left and the life that you are entering, which will reflect these newfound like epiphanies of your self-worth and value. But it takes time and we get stuck in the in-between. And after this big breakthrough moment of empowerment, we're like in this space and we're like, oh crap. Do I deserve better? Nobody new has shown up. maybe that was like a really ballsy moment and maybe I don't deserve better. If I did deserve better, wouldn't that better partner be here by now? If I did deserve better, wouldn't like people be knocking down my door, offering me these dream jobs? And we start to doubt it because it hasn't shown up yet. And so we sit in this space and we like teeter back and forth between like, I know I deserve better, but then fear sets in and we're like, wait, maybe I don't. Maybe I do have it pretty good. Wait, no. I deserve better. I know I deserve better. Oh, wait, you know what? That person wasn't that bad. I mean, no, like we weren't like lighting each other's souls on fire and we weren't like living the dream, but I mean, we got along. Maybe I overreacted. Wait, no. I deserve better. And we do this. We go back and forth because we do not have evidence in our external life of this new self-worth that we had. So we start to get involved in the doubt. We start to play with doubt. And then before we know it, we're like, maybe I should go back to my ex. Maybe I should go back to that job. It really wasn't that bad. Maybe I just like got a little feisty. And then people end up back in the situation they just left, or they recreate the exact situation they left with somebody new or with a new experience. It's not as easy. And like, this is the thing. Having these big breakthrough emotional aha empowerment moments is super, super important because it's the catalyst for change. However, if that is the only thing you rely on to keep you moving forward, doubt is going to creep in. The reality and the fear is going to creep in of, holy shit, I just left my relationship. Like, what did I just do? Or like, holy shit, I just left this job. Now I have no money. I have no plan. What am I doing? That was a mistake. I don't know where I'm headed. Or like, oh my God, I just moved to the state where I don't know anybody. Like, what am I going to do? This is a terrible idea. That will all creep in if you do not develop daily disciplinary habits to reinforce your new belief patterns and your new beliefs about yourself. You will fall back into the old situation, or you will recreate the exact same situation you just left with something or someone new. That's the way it works because you haven't totally ingrained or downloaded your new belief system. So, self-worth and people pleasing, that is kind of where all that stems from. So then the question becomes like, okay, so how do I ingrain and embody this new self-worth, self-empowerment, like I believe I deserve the best in my life so that I don't fall back into these old habits and patterns? A lot of it has to do with the people that you surround yourself with. You can usually figure out your level of self-worth based on the people that you choose to let into your life. Yes, you choose them. Do you have friends that respect you, that value you, that show up for you, that love you, that put in time and energy to get to know you? Or do you have friendships where you're the one that's always reaching out? You're the one always trying to make plans. You're the one always checking in on their day and seeing how things are going. That's going to be a pretty big indicator of your level of self-worth. Not only that, these people can shift and change all the time in your life. If you want people who treat you better, let go of the ones that aren't doing it and make space for the ones who will. It's that simple. So the reason it's super important to have people like this in your life to keep you moving forward is because you want people who know you well enough to know what's going on in your life so that when you make these big changes from a place of self-worth, they will 100% come by your side, hold your hand, love you, support you, boost your confidence, and constantly remind you, you're right, you do deserve better. You're right, you can have anything you want. You're right, like, go live the life of your dreams. You deserve an incredible career life. You deserve to be successful. You deserve great friends. You deserve to have a wonderful relationship. Those people are going to help carry you forward. And if you have, here's the thing, don't get caught up though. This illusion that freaking social media has created of people having like, God, honestly, like 10 best friends, 6 best friends, please. Like, if you have 10 best friends, guarantee you it's really only like 1, maybe 2. What you have is a bunch of friends, but like best friends are people who know you very deeply and they know the details. They know your fears. They know your dreams. They know your flaws. They know all your quirky, weird insecurities and problems and setbacks and PTSD. And they choose to be a part of your life in spite of all that. Those are your people, the people that are like, God, yeah, Ashley's got some weird stuff that she does every single day. She's super sensitive. She's also like super intuitive and like into all this stuff with the moon and astrology, but she's like also kind of like into fitness and lifting heavy weights and all these things. And she sometimes gets like abandonment, PTSD and all that. But you know what? I know all this about her and that's like, I still choose to be her friend. Those are my best friends. So same thing for you. Social media, if you're posting about like, oh my God, this is my tribe, and you got like 10 people in there, I don't believe you. Sorry. Like, I'm calling bullshit on that. Like, I'm going to guess you got like 2. Out of those 10, 2 of them know you. But anyways, my point in this is if you have even 1, consider yourself so lucky and so blessed that the universe gave you somebody who loves you that much to be a part of your journey and a part of your life, that when you make big decisions and you step into your self-worth and you decide to claim a better life for yourself, those are the people that are going to be cheering you on and moving you forward. And here's a good indicator of the people who have your best intention and the ones who don't, is when you stop doing what everybody else wants you to do and you start doing what really makes you happy. Pay attention to who is happy for you and who starts getting angry at you. So if all of a sudden, like, let's say, I don't know, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, it's not really like you're starting to, like, I don't know, like I don't think this is the person that I want. Your family loves them. They're raving about him, but like something in you, you're like, this doesn't feel like what is best for me. But your family loves them. Here's how you find out where their intentions and their motives lie is when let's say you like, you know what? I don't want this husband. I don't want this wife. I don't want this partner, whatever. And you explain yourself. You're like, yes, I know you guys loved that person, but for me, like that just wasn't the right person for me. If somebody truly loves and cares for you, they will support you 100%. Why? Because it's not about who they want you to end up with. It's about what makes you happy. It's the same thing with a job. If you go and tell your friends or your family that you're like, I think I deserve to go after my dreams. I think my time should be spent giving myself the opportunity to live the career that I want. And you got all these people that are like, I don't know, like it's a huge mistake. Like what? But you make so much money here, but you seem so like good at what you're doing. And you are telling these people, yeah, but I'm not happy. And they continue to push these things on you. Those are the people who are not interested in what you want and what you really need. Those are the ones that are interested in you living the life that they want you to live. And it's crazy how quickly people's relationships change when you start asserting yourself, standing up for yourself, and making yourself happy. What? Would it ever be a problem in any kind of relationship for you to make choices that make you happy? Like, I've never understood this. And I mean, this is common. Everybody has this. Everybody has this in friendships. Everybody has this in family, where people start doing things that make them more happy. And all of a sudden, like someone is mad about it. It's like, what? I don't understand. Like, why is this affecting? What does this person's happiness have to do with you? If they're happy, like, as their friend or as their family member or whatever, like, wouldn't you want them to be happy? What is your motivating factor behind it? So when you get into people pleasing, and if this is something that like you really have an issue with that keeps you stuck in making choices that aren't in alignment with who you are and what you really want, you got to start to question the integrity and the motivation behind the people that you are putting so much energy and effort towards. Plus, here is what I pointed out earlier this week to somebody. You are putting so much energy into making all these other people happy and doing and making choices just because you're like, well, I want my dad to be happier, or I want my mom to be happier, or somebody to be proud of me, or my best friend, or my coworker, or my boss, or whoever. And my question back to you is, are they putting that much energy and effort into their choices to make sure that their choices make you happy? Probably not. They probably aren't even thinking about you. I would guarantee that 90% of the people that you are so concerned about pleasing probably aren't even giving you a second thought. Not because you don't deserve it, but because they're selfish. They don't care. Unless they're good people in your life that genuinely want your best intention, then that's a totally different story. Then they are giving that, but I mean, you would already know that. So that's the people pleasing. To get past the people pleasing, you got to acknowledge what is the fear behind it. And normally the fear is, I don't want people not to like me. I don't want to cause pain. I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to make anybody mad. I just want love. But it's also a fear of ending up alone. Well, if I do what I want and what makes me happy, am I going to end up alone? Maybe for a little bit, but if you end up alone, all the people that left you alone because you made choices that make you happy needed to go anyways because they're not good for you. To move past this though, after acknowledging that and realizing the fear behind it, you have to figure out a way to not only decide and recognize your self-worth, but on a core level. Like I said, there's a difference between wanting something and knowing you deserve something. One is very like, what's the word? One feels very desperate and one feels very like empowered and confident and just like, no, there's not even a fight here. Like, I just know this is what I deserve and what I'm worth, and that's what I'm going for. That's it. It's not like, oh my God, like I like this guy, I hope he likes me back. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. So to get to a place of knowing where like, I mean, you feel it and I can't really explain it, but like, it's like anything else in life. You just know. You got to do some deep work. Nobody likes the deep work, but the deep work is the way to heal and to move forward. And what deep work am I talking about? You have to figure out why you have issues with self-worth to begin with. And honestly, this can take years. It can take a month. It can take one breakthrough aha moment. But once you figure out why, and a lot of times this goes to our inner child, our childhood trauma, stuff that stems way back when like our subconscious and conscious were all developing. Once you figure out why, it's a game changer. So examples of this, and I'm not going to spend an hour talking about this because everybody has different upbringings and things. But like people who get in abusive situations, you probably ended up thinking you deserve abuse because the father or mother you had showed you abuse as a form of love. So therefore you accept it and you think that's all you deserve is abuse. Or people who feel like they're not enough. They're not good enough. It probably stems from some memory in your childhood where you felt powerless and you didn't feel like you were good enough to, I don't know, get the boy, get the girl, get picked for the kickball team. Who knows? Or maybe you weren't good enough for the love of one of your parents, or maybe it was a sibling, or whatever it is. There's usually a core memory, though, associated with low self-worth. And then every experience in our external life reflects this core memory and these beliefs until we change that core memory, we decide and reprogram our mind, and then we make decisions and take action in moving forward of this new reflection of our core memory. And like I said, the people you surround yourself with, that you choose to surround yourself with, are going to be very impactful in not only the direction that your life goes, but in what your overall identity is. So don't be afraid. If there's one thing, if I could look back and there's one thing I could tell my 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old self in regards to honestly, I was never really a people pleaser. Even as a kid, I didn't care. I just did whatever I wanted. But in the world of friendships and relationships, it would probably be something like if there was one thing I could tell her at that age, it'd probably be something along the lines of like, do not be afraid to lose the good in order to have the great. Don't cling to something that's good, knowing that something better and great for you also exists. Because there's so many times that I held on to friendships, I held on to relationships just for the sake of the longevity of it. And like, yeah, we're good friends, even though the truth is like we had outgrown each other, we had gone separate ways. But I held on to people for so much longer because I was afraid to let go of a good friend or a good relationship in order to have great friends and a great relationship. And I mean, when you're young, you don't know any better. But like now, the older I get, like I just think about that. It's like the space that takes up areas in your life where you are settling is space that you can open up for the love and the abundance that is waiting to come in. But if you are not willing to give up the good in order to have the great, then there's no space for that great to come into your life. But you have to get to a place of deserving and knowing your worth and value to accept the great in order to come in. Which kind of stems into the whole settling thing. Settling and self-worth. Why in the world would we knowingly settle for less than what we actually want? Well, self-worth. Self-worth, also fear. It is much safer and easier to settle for almost than to risk everything in order to get what you actually want. I mean, that's such a challenging place to be, especially like it's obvious if you're settling for something that's extreme. Like, I'm not even going to give examples because I don't want to give an example of settling and it end up being what somebody on this podcast is currently in because I don't know every single situation. But you know if you are settling, you know if you are playing it safe. So the thing with settling is not only like, okay, so with settling, obviously like it's a self-worth thing and it's a fear thing. But I would strive or venture to say that I think it's more self-worth than anything. The fear stems from just validation of the low self-worth. So here's an example of what I mean by that. Let's say you are settling in a job because part of you struggles to believe that you deserve to be paid more or you deserve to do work that you love and be very well compensated for it. Or maybe it's imposter syndrome that you don't think you're good enough or qualified enough to do work like that or whatever it might be. But you continue to settle for the job that you have because of all those worth issues, but also because what if you actually did go for what you truly want and think you may actually deserve, and then you don't get it? Then it's just going to further validate that feeling of not being good enough. Where I believe, and I mean, same thing goes for a relationship. You can settle in a relationship even though you know that you deserve better because it's easier than opening yourself up in the risk and vulnerability of going for the kind of relationship that you want and then not getting it, which goes back to the example I was giving earlier where we have these moments of empowerment and we're like, nope, I'm breaking up with this person. I deserve better. And then you're in the space where nobody new has shown up and you're like, oh crap, maybe I don't. Which is why it's so important to have people in your life that can remind you in those moments of doubt of like, no. I know you're feeling scared right now. I know you're feeling vulnerable, but you made the right choice. You do deserve better. You do deserve to have everything you want. You do deserve to have the best in life to keep you moving forward. Like, man, relationships in general, I feel like it's gotten so taboo to ever go through a hard time and lean on people for support, which is ridiculous if you think about it. Like, everybody's always acting like they have it together and figured out. And there's just so much beauty. I think it's the name of a book, Beauty in Breaking. There's so much beauty in breaking or being broken because you find out really quickly the people who stay by your side, but also the people who not only stay by your side, but are like, hey, I got you. Like, if you're having a weak day or an insecure day, or you're forgetting your worth, or you're forgetting who you are or your value, let me know. And I will give you a little pep talk and remind you, like, I am here for you. But like, it requires such vulnerability to even be able to do that and trust people to do that. But anyways, I digress. Going back, settling. Make sure that the people in your life are there to help support you so that you do know your worth and your value. And maybe like growing up, maybe you didn't have anybody around to do that. Then listen to this podcast. I don't even know you. Well, I know some of you. But like, I don't even know you, and I can tell you right now, just because you are a human being with a heart and soul in this world and you are existing in this moment, you deserve all the good, the love, the abundance, the joy, and the happiness that exist in the universe. It's that simple. Not because you did something, not because you're in good shape, not because like you worked your ass off, not because of any of that, but just because you exist. I don't believe that life is meant to be this constant struggle. It's only a constant struggle because we believe we have to struggle or prove something to be happy. It's like we almost are like playing this game with the universe or God of like, I'll do anything. Like, if you just give me this one thing, I'll do anything. I won't drink again. I won't ever call that person again. It's like we have to barter, and it's like the universe loves you. It doesn't care. You can keep doing that or don't do it. Like, it doesn't really matter. All it cares is that you recognize that you are deeply loved and valued as a human being, and it wants to give you everything that exists to make you happy, but it can only give it to you if you actually believe that you deserve it. It's kind of like, it's a whole analogy of you cannot give away what you do not have inside yourself. You also cannot receive what does not exist inside of yourself. And I have seen this so many freaking times where people are being shown love, yet the person who is being shown love is angry, feeling like nobody loves them. And you're like, God damn, like I don't know how else to love you. And the reason they can't receive all this love that is being given to them is because they do not have it in themselves to believe that they are deserving of love. Like, that's just the way that it goes. Your inside world is a reflection all around you. Your brain will filter your entire life to reflect the core beliefs you have about yourself. When you start deciding that you deserve better and are more valuable, and you start raising your level of self-worth, it is inevitable that everything else in your life has to reflect that. So, like, just think about that. Now, here's the cool thing, not necessarily the cool thing, but again, I'm not a psychologist or a scientist, but how I think life works in our favor, except when we're in it, it doesn't necessarily seem that way, is I do believe that life will, couple things. Life will strip away all the things in our life that we get our validation and our worth from in order to force us to recognize and understand it's all within ourselves. Or, so that's one way, or it will give us the opposite in order for us to realize we can give it to ourselves. So maybe you get your validation and your self-worth from the level of income or your job status. What the hell are you going to do then if you lose all that money and you get fired? Does your self-worth go down with all of that? Or is that just an external factor and you're like, yeah, I got to figure some things out, but that has nothing to do with like who I am as a human being and my value as a human being. It's crazy. Like, even in like marriage and divorce, like the amount of people who look down on marriage and divorce, well, not marriage, but like more divorce, is so funny to me, because it's just like, wow, your perception of like people who have been divorced or even gone through a breakup, like, is nothing more than a reflection you have of yourself if you ever went through that. And that's how everything is. Like, I told somebody this the other day who was going through a hard time. I said, I think sometimes we have life experiences to further teach us to love ourselves deeper, because let's say prior to that experience, if somebody else was in that experience, we would judge them or think differently of them. And we then have the experience ourselves and we have a different understanding and we're like, oh, this is teaching me to love myself greater, but also now I can remove this judgment I had of others and love others greater. Okay, so we'll just use a marriage divorce as an example. Let's say, for example, you always looked down or thought poorly of people who went through divorce. Oh my God, I can't believe that person got a divorce. That's so embarrassing. I'll never be that person. What a failure, whatever that might be. Until maybe you get married and you go through a divorce and then you're like, oh, but the divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me. Am I going to judge myself that harshly? No. And now all of a sudden, what happens? Your heart opens and it expands. You have greater love for yourself. And now you have a greater understanding and greater love for other people because you've went through it. So I think in terms of self-worth and self-love and how the universe teaches us is by either stripping away everything that gave us those validations and levels of worth through hey, so yeah, you're living the high life right now. You got the job, you got the income, you got the girlfriend or boyfriend, you got the friends, you got this. You're feeling great about yourself. You feel like, you know what? I am an awesome human being. I am valuable and I am worthy and I am fantastic. And life is okay. So what we really want this soul to learn is that your value and worth doesn't lie in all these external things. So in order for you to see that, we're going to start stripping some of this away and see what happens. And what happens? Your friends start to leave and you're like, oh my God, nobody loves me. I'm all alone. And the universe is like, oh God, we got another one coming. And then you start to lose money, or maybe you lose your job, and then you lose your car, and then you lose your partner or your spouse. And next thing you know, you're losing everything in life. Not because life hates you, but because life deeply loves you and wants you to be happy. But in order for you to be happy, you have to see that love and happiness exist within you. And then build your life from that place. Build your life from knowing that I am deeply loved, knowing that I deserve the best, knowing that I deserve to do what makes me happy, not what's going to make everybody else happy. How do I want to create my life from this space? Then nothing else matters. And that's the irony. It's the whole thing. Once you recognize that and learn that lesson, that's when the right opportunity shows up. That's when the right person shows up. That's when these amazing friends show up, because now you no longer need all that external validation. You are just being and existing from a place of knowing and acknowledging your self-worth. And you're like, wow, it's so much easier when you're from this place instead of chasing it and striving for it and struggling for it. So if life is kind of blowing up for you, right? And shit's hitting the fan and you're losing things and things are just shifting and changing, it is probably life working out in your favor to be like, hey, you've kind of been selling yourself short. You kind of forgot that you're an amazing human being and you deserve the best, and you forgot your value and your self-worth. In order for you to see that, though, we got to strip away all these things where you've been playing small, where you've been settling, where you've been accepting less than you deserve, not because we want to put you through pain, but because we actually want to set you up for a life of happiness. If that happens for you, then think about this. Think about this entire episode and go within yourself and really evaluate, are you wanting all these things, or are you functioning from a place of deserving all these things? If you're struggling with people pleasing, what part of you feels like you don't deserve to have better or be treated differently? So much to the point that you're willing to stay in situations and relationships that are hurting you, all for the sake of trying to protect or save somebody else. And if you're settling, listen, as your friend, and I'm going to assume we're friends because you're listening to the podcast, if you are settling, and you know if you are settling, as your friend who will always tell you the truth and be honest with you, who or what are you waiting for to make the changes you need in order to have the life that you want. Because nobody is going to come save you. Nobody is going to make the change for you but you. You're the one that has to decide you deserve better. You're the one that has to take action and move forward and decide that, and then surround yourself with people who remind you of that. All right. Well, this is a 15-minute podcast. Wow. I didn't even have notes for this. I literally am standing in like this little pod, just like talking out loud, like I'm having a conversation with a friend. So I hope you enjoyed this. I am so glad you tuned in this week. I am sorry that I'm a little late on this week's podcast. At least I got it out this week, but there's just been a lot of things going on, and I'm not even going to lie to you guys. Like, I kind of just forgot. My bad. I will work on it, and I will do my best to have this out for you every single Monday. Thank you for all of you who have screenshot this and shared it on social media. If you could do that, I would really appreciate it. It's on Instagram. It's just at Ashley Drummond. And like I said at the beginning, if you would like to be part of the weekly email that I send out, the link is in the show notes. You can go to ashleydrummonds.com and sign up, and I will send out the latest episodes for you to help you stay inspired and empowered in your life. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, I will see you in next week's Phoenix Rising podcast episode. Bye.